Picture standing in the middle of a bustling city, streetcars honking, phones buzzing, the hum of modern life all around you. Now, close your eyes and imagine that beneath your feet, woven into the very fabric of this 21st century world, are threads of traditions so ancient they stretch back thousands of years. Practices that have survived empires rising and falling, technologies transforming, and cultures evolving, yet they're still here, alive and breathing, right alongside us. This isn't just history, this is the past reaching out to shake hands with the present in ways most of us never even notice. What if I told you that some of the rituals, customs, and traditions you might think vanished with the sands of time are still practiced today? Not as museum pieces or reenactments, but as living, vibrant parts of communities across the globe. From sacred ceremonies passed down through generations to everyday habits with roots deeper than we realize, these ancient traditions are hidden in plain sight. They're the whispers of our ancestors echoing across centuries, reminding us that some things, no matter how much the world changes, are too powerful, too meaningful to ever fade away. That's exactly what we're about to explore together, 25 ancient traditions that have defied time itself. Some are shrouded in mystery, their origins lost to history. Others are so seamlessly woven into modern life that we forget how extraordinary their survival really is. But each one holds a story, a testament to human resilience, faith, and the unbreakable bonds of culture. So come with me on a journey through time, where the past isn't just something we read about, it's something we can still touch, feel, and even be part of today. Because the most fascinating history isn't always trapped in books, sometimes it's living right beside us, waiting to be noticed. The Japanese tea ceremony is far more than just drinking matcha. It's a choreographed meditation, a dance of grace and intention that's been perfected over 1,200 years. Picture this, in the 9th century, Buddhist monks returning from China brought back not just tea leaves but an entire philosophy woven into their preparation. What began as a medicinal ritual blossomed into a spiritual practice under Zen masters, who saw the act of making tea as a mirror for life itself, every movement deliberate, every gesture infused with meaning. The ceremony, known as Chanoyu, or the Way of Tea, became a living metaphor for harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. At first glance, it might seem like an elaborate way to serve a drink, but every detail carries weight. The host's careful selection of utensils, the deliberate pacing of pouring water, even the way the bowl is turned before drinking, all designed to anchor participants in the present moment. The tea room itself is a sanctuary, often decorated with a single scroll or flower arrangement to reflect the season, reminding guests to appreciate fleeting beauty. And here's the remarkable part: this tradition isn't frozen in history. Today, thousands of tea schools from Kyoto to New York still teach these rituals, adapting them for modern lives while preserving their soul. What's astonishing is how these ceremonies bridge centuries. A teenager in Tokyo might attend a class after school, learning the same motions practiced by samurai in the 16th century. Business people use tea gatherings to forge connections, not over rushed coffee but through shared silence and reflection. Even the tools, the bamboo whisk, the handcrafted clay bowl, are often made by artisans using methods unchanged for generations. The tea ceremony isn't just a relic, it's a rebellion against the chaos of the modern world, proving that some traditions don't just survive, they thrive because we still crave what they offer. A pause, a breath, a reminder that even the simplest acts can hold profound meaning when we give them our full attention. Centuries ago, under the vast Nordic skies, Viking chieftains gathered their people around roaring bonfires to honor gods like Odin and Thor with a sacred rite called the Blót. These were no simple gatherings, they were acts of communion between mortals and deities where animals were sacrificed, their blood sprinkled on altars and participants, while mead flowed freely in toasts for prosperity and victory. The air would have been thick with smoke, the scent of roasting meat, and the echoing chants of skalds reciting myths. It might sound like a distant, almost mythical practice, yet traces of these ancient rituals linger in modern Scandinavia, hidden in plain sight within the cozy glow of winter festivals like Jol, the ancestor of today's Christmas celebrations. Take the Yule feast, for instance. The Vikings celebrated Jol, a midwinter festival where they offered gifts to the gods in hopes of ensuring the sun's return. Today, the tradition lives on in the smorgasbord of Jolbord, a lavish spread of ham, herring, and spiced breads that would feel familiar to a Norse farmer. Even the act of raising a glass echoes the Blót ceremonial toasts. When Scandinavians shout skål before drinking, they're unknowingly mirroring their ancestors who toasted with horns of mead to honor the gods. The word itself comes from Old Norse skål, meaning bowl, often passed around the fire during rituals. Then there are the bonfires. In Denmark and Sweden, Midsummer's Eve still sees communities gathering around flames, a direct descendant of the Blót sacred fires, once believed to carry offerings to the gods. And let's not forget the Yule goat, a straw figure that now decorates town squares but traces back to the goats of Thor's chariot, animals sacred enough to be sacrificed in his name. What's fascinating is how these traditions evolved. When Christianity spread across Scandinavia rather than erase pagan customs, it absorbed them, draping new meanings over old practices. The blood sacrifices faded, but the spirit of communal feasting, the reverence for light in darkness, even the evergreen decorations, all these survived, repurposed but unmistakably Viking at heart. Today, a family in Oslo might decorate their home with straw ornaments, never realizing they're handling the same symbols their ancestors hung for protection. A Stockholm office worker sharing glögg with colleagues is part of a chain stretching back to warriors toasting victory under the aurora borealis. The blot may be gone, but its essence endures, proving that even the most visceral rituals can transform, finding new life in the unlikeliest places. After all, traditions aren't just about preserving the past, they're about keeping its fire alive, one generation at a time. Imagine standing before a blazing fire as flames lick the sky, carrying with them offerings of ghee, herbs, and whispered Sanskrit mantras, a ritual unchanged for 3,000 years. This is Homa, the Vedic fire ceremony that has been the heartbeat of Hindu spirituality since the Bronze Age. While most ancient fire rituals have turned to ash in the winds of time, Homa still burns bright today, illuminating weddings, temple rites, and even cutting-edge scientific studies exploring its impact on the human mind. The practice traces back to the Rig Veda, one of humanity's oldest texts, where fire was seen as a divine messenger bridging earth and heaven. Priests would chant precise melodies while pouring offerings into the flames, believing the fire would transform them into blessings. What's remarkable is how little the core ritual has changed. Modern homas still follow the same steps, laying sacred herbs in geometric fire pits, chanting mantras note for note as they were sung millennia ago, and watching as smoke carries prayers upward. The fire isn't just symbolic, it's a living participant worshipped as Agni, the god of fire who consumes offerings and purifies everything he touches. You'll find Homa at the center of life's most pivotal moments. In South Indian weddings, couples circle the fire 7 times, each step sealing a vow under Agni's witness. New businesses might host a Homa before opening, asking for prosperity. Even astronauts with India's space program have participated in fire rituals before launches, blending cutting-edge science with ancient tradition. But here's where it gets fascinating. Researchers are now studying what happens to the brain during these ceremonies. Studies at institutions like Bangalore's National Institute of Mental Health show Homa participants entering deep meditative states, with brain scans revealing theta waves associated with heightened focus and reduced anxiety. The rhythmic chanting, the fire's hypnotic dance, even the scent of burning herbs, all seem to trigger a neurological reset. Perhaps that's why this tradition endures. In a world of constant noise, Homer offers something rare, a moment where time slows, where every sense is engaged, where the act of watching flames becomes an act of healing. A Silicon Valley engineer might attend a Homer for stress relief, unknowingly mirroring a Vedic priest who sought clarity 3,000 years prior. The vessels change, clay pots become brass trays, forest clearings transform into urban temples, but the fire burns just as bright, proving that some lights never go out. The rhythmic thunder of 100 feet hitting the earth in unison, the soaring cries of singers weaving together, the dazzling swirl of beadwork and feathers. This is the powwow, a tradition that has pulsed through Native American communities for centuries. Long before European settlers arrived, tribes across North America gathered for sacred ceremonies that wove together prayer, dance, and communal bonding. These weren't mere performances, they were acts of spiritual renewal where dancers became living prayers, their movements echoing creation stories and honoring the interconnectedness of all life. The heartbeat of the drum, often called the heartbeat of Mother Earth, anchored these gatherings, a sound so powerful it was believed to carry messages to the spirit world. When colonial forces sought to suppress indigenous cultures, banning ceremonies and confiscating sacred drums, powwows didn't disappear, they adapted. Some tribes, like the Lakota and Ojibwe, held secret gatherings in remote areas, preserving rituals under the guise of social dances. Others blended traditions, creating new forms of expression that could survive under oppressive policies. By the late 19th century, the modern powwow began to emerge as a public celebration of resilience, especially after the U.S. government's relocation programs forced native people into urban areas. Far from homelands, these gatherings became lifelines, connecting displaced communities through shared heritage. Today's powwows are vibrant declarations of cultural pride, where ancient and contemporary dance styles, like the gravity-defying fancy dance or the graceful jingle dress dance, born from a healing vision, draw competitors and spectators from across continents. The regalia worn by dancers isn't costume, it's a visual language with every feather, color, and stitch holding personal and tribal significance. A single eagle feather might represent years of earned respect, while intricate beadwork could tell a family's history. Even the arena itself is sacred, often blessed with cedar smoke and entered with reverence, honoring the circle of life central to indigenous worldviews. What's extraordinary is how powwows bridge generations. Elders who once fought for the right to practice their traditions now watch grandchildren master dances passed down through oral teaching. Non-native attendees, once barred from witnessing these ceremonies, are now welcomed as guests, invited to witness not appropriate the living culture. Universities host educational powwows, while intertribal gatherings like the Gathering of Nations in New Mexico draw thousands, proving these traditions aren't relics but thriving, evolving celebrations. The drum still calls, the dancers still rise, and with every step they rewrite the narrative not as survivors of a vanishing past, but as vibrant architects of the future. Here in southern China, 2,000 years ago, a heartbroken poet waded into the Miluo River with stones in his sleeves, choosing death over witnessing his kingdom's corruption. Yuan's tragic suicide in 278 BC would spark a mourning ritual so powerful it still sends dragon boats slicing through waters worldwide every 5th day of the 5th lunar month. The Dragon Boat Festival isn't just a holiday, it's a living memorial, where every dumpling wrapped in bamboo leaves and every pounding paddle honors a man whose patriotism became immortal. Legend says villagers raced their boats to save Yuan, beating drums to scare fish away from his body while tossing rice into the water to feed his spirit. When his ghost supposedly complained the rice was being stolen by river creatures, they began wrapping it in bamboo leaves, creating the first zongzi. These pyramid-shaped parcels of glutinous rice, stuffed with fillings from red bean paste to salted egg yolks, are now so beloved that over 300 million are consumed during the festival in China alone. Families gather to fold the leaves with military precision, passing down techniques unchanged for centuries. Each knot tied is a whisper across generations, a culinary time capsule preserving flavors from the Han Dynasty to today's kitchen tables. But it's the dragon boats that turned this local tradition into a global phenomenon. Originally carved from single tree trunks and painted with scales to mimic the mythical long, these vessels have evolved into sleek, 40-foot racing machines crewed by 20 paddlers in perfect sync. The drumbeat isn't just rhythm, it's a sacred echo of those desperate villagers trying to reach Yuan, now codified into races where teams from Toronto to Cape Town compete. Hong Kong's International Dragon Boat Festival alone draws 120 teams, while corporations use races for team building, proving how a funerary rite transformed into a billion-dollar sport. What's mesmerizing is how the festival absorbs modern life without losing its soul. In Singapore, vegan zongzi cater to health trends. In California, crews integrate GPS tech into training while still performing pre-race ceremonies to awaken their dragon boats with dotting the I's, a ritual believed to bring the carved figureheads to life. Scientists even study the paddlers' cardiovascular synchronization, marveling at how ancient drum patterns optimize teamwork. Through wars, revolutions, and globalization, this festival has floated intact because at its core, it's not about boats or dumplings. It's about the unbreakable human impulses to honor loss, to fight against currents, and to turn grief into something that moves forward, stroke by stroke, generation after generation. High above the jungle floor, a heavy rubber ball arcs through the air, propelled not by hands but by hips. A single miscalculated move could mean victory or a deadly sacrifice. This was Pok-a-Tok, the sacred ball game played by the Maya for over 3,000 years, where athletes weren't just competitors but actors in a cosmic drama etched into temple walls across Mesoamerica. Far more than a sport, these matches reenacted the Maya creation myth. The hero twins battle against the gods of the underworld, with every bounce of the ball symbolizing the sun's journey across the sky, and every score deciding the fate of crops, kings, and even the players themselves. The rules were as brutal as they were precise. Teams of 2 to 7 players, clad in protective padding made from woven cotton and animal hides, had to keep a solid rubber ball, weighing up to 9 pounds in constant motion using only their hips, elbows, or knees. The objective, to send the ball through a stone hoop mounted vertically on the court wall, a feat so difficult some games lasted for days. But here's where it took a chilling turn. Historical accounts and carvings suggest high-stakes matches sometimes ended with ritual decapitation, either as an honor for victorious players or a penalty for losers. At Tsoureki, it's Oz Great Ball Court, where acoustics amplify whispers into roars. The carvings of skull racks and decapitated players leave little doubt about the game's life or death stakes. Yet against all odds, Pok-a-Tok never truly vanished. In the Guatemalan highlands, descendants of the Maya kept a simplified version alive throughout centuries of colonization, passing down the hip-driven techniques orally. Today, a full-blown revival is underway. Every Sunday in Mérida, Mexico, teams clad in white uniforms with red sashes echoing ancient warrior garb compete in tournaments where the ball still echoes off stone courts. Modern players train with the same grueling intensity as their ancestors, developing calloused hips capable of redirecting a ball moving at 60 miles per hour. Schools in Belize teach children the traditional moves, not just as history but as living heritage. Even the rubber balls are still handmade using techniques from the pre-Columbian era, tapping sap from Castilla elastica trees and boiling it with morning glory vines to achieve the perfect bounce. What makes this revival extraordinary is how it bridges sacred and secular worlds. For some players, it's pure sport, a test of agility and teamwork. For others, every match remains a prayer. In Yucatan, ceremonies before games still invoke the hero twins, and the ball's movement mirrors the path of Venus, a planet sacred to the Maya. Archaeologists collaborate with players to decode ancient strategies from buried murals, while physicists study the game's unique aerodynamics. The stone hoops may now stand in museums rather than temples, but when the ball soars through one, the roar of the crowd carries the same awe their ancestors felt, proof that some traditions don't fade. They evolve, their roots reaching deep into the earth while their branches stretch toward the future. The crash of a 20-foot wooden log hitting the ground, the skirl of bagpipes cutting through misty air, the flash of tartan kilts against emerald hills. This is the Scottish Highland Games, where feats of strength and culture trace straight back to Celtic warriors preparing for battle. These gatherings aren't just modern sporting events, they're living threads connecting today's Scots to their clan ancestors, who used similar contests to test men's mettle and forge community bonds centuries ago. Picture 11th century chieftains watching their best fighters hurl boulders or race up mountainsides, proving who deserved to guard the clan's cattle or lead charges into battle. Those primal tests evolved into today's games, where caber tossing, flipping a pole as tall as a telephone pole end over end, isn't just spectacle. It's a time capsule of survival skills disguised as sport. The caber itself tells a story. In the 16th century, Scots used these massive logs to bridge streams or scale castle walls during sieges. Tossing one required the same brute strength and precision needed to navigate the Highlands' rugged terrain. Today's athletes still heave cabers weighing up to 150 pounds, but the goal isn't distance, it's landing the pole at a perfect 12 o'clock angle, mirroring how clansmen once positioned timber for fortifications. Nearby, the hammer throw echoes another battlefield skill, swinging a metal ball on a handle, just as warriors once hurled weapons called lochaber axes in combat. Even the stone put, where competitors launch a heavy rock from their shoulder, descends from ancient tests of marksmanship with boulders. But the games aren't just brawn, they're a sensory immersion in Scottish identity. The haunting drone of bagpipes, originally used to rally clans before fights, now accompanies every event, their music officially recognized by UNESCO as cultural heritage. Tartan patterns, once outlawed after the 1745 Jacobite rebellion as symbols of rebellion, now swirl proudly on kilts, each plaid tied to specific clans like wearable family trees. And then there's the haggis hurling contest, a whimsical nod to Scotland's national dish that somehow feels just as sacred as the athletic trials. What's extraordinary is how these games became global. When Scots emigrated during the 19th century, they brought the games with them as anchors of home. Now, over 200 events take place worldwide, from New Zealand's Canterbury Highland Games to the 50,000 spectators at Colorado's Estes Park gathering. Japanese competitors meticulously study caber physics, while Tanzanian bagpipe bands master reels. The games even saved traditional skills from extinction. Modern sheepdog trials at events mimic ancient herding techniques, and Celtic harp competitions revive melodies nearly lost to time. At its heart, the Highland Games aren't about nostalgia, they're about continuity. A teenager in Edinburgh training for the weight over bar event uses the same muscles as his Iron Age ancestors. A Canadian grandmother teaching grandchildren to weave clan tartans stitches together generations. Whether in a remote Scottish glen or a Florida stadium, when the caber flips, the pipes swell, and the crowd roars, it's more than a competition, it's a declaration that some traditions don't fade. They adapt, they travel, and they endure because pride has always been Scotland's strongest throw. Deep in the heart of winter, when much of the world huddles indoors, millions gather around tables overflowing with sprouted greens, golden coins, and flickering candles to welcome spring's arrival, not with a casual holiday, but with a 2-week celebration older than Persia itself. Nowruz, meaning New Day, is no ordinary New Year's festival. This 3,000-year-old Zoroastrian tradition, inscribed on UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List, transforms homes across Iran, Afghanistan, and Central Asia into living museums of symbolism, where every apple placed on the half-seen table whispers secrets from the age of Cyrus the Great. At the center of it all sits the half-seen, a meticulously arranged tableau of 7 items starting with the Persian letter, scene S, each a poetic representation of renewal and hope. Sabzeh, sprouted wheat or lentils, embodies rebirth, their tender green shoots mirroring the first push of spring grass through snow. Samanyu, a sweet pudding made from wheat germ, symbolizes affluence, a food so labor-intensive to prepare that its presence promises prosperity. Then there's senged, dried olaster fruit for love, sear garlic representing health, sebe apples for beauty, somak sumac berries evoking sunrise's crimson hues, and Tsoureki vinegar as patience, acknowledging life's sour moments alongside the sweet. But the tableau doesn't stop there. A mirror reflects the infinite, while goldfish swim in bowls as living emblems of life's fluidity. Even the candles, always an odd number, defy darkness, just as Zoroastrianism's eternal flame once burned in temples across Persia. Nowruz's rituals unfold like a choreographed dance with nature. Weeks before the spring equinox, families plant sabzeh, watching daily as the shoots stretch toward light, a tangible countdown to renewal. On the last Wednesday of the old year, Chahashan Tsoureki sees communities leaping over bonfires, shouting, "Give me your red hue, take back my pallor." As flames purify misfortunes, then comes the moment of Tavel, the precise astronomical second when the sun crosses the equator. In Tehran, crowds hold breath as a gunshot marks the equinox. In Kazakhstan, they listen for boiling milk to bubble over, a sign abundance has arrived. For 13 days, visits and gifts flow between households, always beginning with the eldest, because Nowruz isn't just a holiday. It's a social contract, stitching communities together through shared rituals. What's astonishing is how this ancient festival thrives under modern pressures. In exile communities from Toronto to Los Angeles, Iranian families recreate half-seen tables using substitutes when sumac or samanyu prove scarce. Afghan refugees in Germany still jump makeshift fires in parking lots. Even in digital spaces, Zoom Nowruz parties connect diaspora families across time zones. And the festival's resilience isn't just cultural, it's political. During Iran's Islamic Revolution, some clerics tried banning Nowruz as pagan, only to face massive resistance. Today, the government officially celebrates it, a testament to traditions too deeply rooted to erase. Perhaps Nowruz endures because it answers something timeless, the human need to mark time's passage not with arbitrary dates but with the Earth's own rhythms. When a grandmother in Tajikistan gently places a goldfish bowl beside her Quran, or a young Kurdish couple in Turkey exchanges painted eggs, they're not just keeping customs, they're affirming that no matter what wars, migrations, or regimes unfold, spring always returns. The half-seen table isn't a relic, it's a rebellion, proving that some threads of culture can never be cut, only rewoven into new patterns across millennia. Under the vast Australian sky, where ochre cliffs meet endless red deserts, there exists an unbroken thread of storytelling stretching back 60,000 years, making Aboriginal Dreamtime narratives the oldest continuous oral tradition on Earth. These aren't just tales, they're living maps, legal systems, and sacred texts woven together, explaining how ancestral beings shaped the land in a time beyond time. Imagine standing before Uluru at sunset, hearing an elder describe how the rock's cracks were formed by the tail of the Wanampi water snake, or tracing constellations named not for gods but for emus and kangaroos that walked the earth during creation. Every hill, river, and tree holds a story, and for Aboriginal communities, these stories are the title deeds to the land itself, carrying knowledge of water sources, food cycles, and survival codes honed over millennia. The way these stories are told is as vital as their content, passed down through songlines, rhythmic pathways of music and dance that crisscross the continent. Dreamtime knowledge is encoded in complex layers. A single song might describe the route between waterholes, with each verse corresponding to landmarks visible only to initiated listeners. The melodic contours mimic the terrain's rises and falls, turning navigation into performance. Traditional paintings, whether on bark or sand, serve as visual mnemonics. Dot patterns aren't abstract art but representations of animal tracks or star paths visible only to those who know how to read them. When a child learns the story of the rainbow serpent, they're not just hearing a myth, they're inheriting hydrological wisdom about flood patterns and riverbeds shaped by that same serpent's movements in the dreaming. Modern Australia is waking up to the urgency of preserving this fragile wisdom. In Arnhem Land, schools run bilingual programs where elders teach children to write stories in Yolngu Matha first, English second. Universities collaborate with communities to digitize songlines using GPS technology, mapping ancient routes onto interactive platforms while respecting sacred knowledge. Even the Australian military has consulted Aboriginal trackers to incorporate land reading skills into survival training. Artists like the late Emily Kamkayengwa transformed Dreamtime motifs into contemporary paintings that hang in galleries worldwide, their swirling dots and lines carrying stories of yam plants and ceremonial dances, a visual language that bridges ancient and modern. Yet every step forward comes with tension. When mining companies seek to excavate sacred sites like the Juukan Gorge, destroyed in 2020 despite 40,000 years of continuous human connection, it sparks legal battles redefining land rights. Some elders cautiously share stories with outsiders to foster understanding, while others fiercely guard knowledge as cultural property. The line between preservation and appropriation is delicate. A didgeridoo played as a tourist souvenir in Sydney may hold profound ritual significance in Arnhem Land ceremonies. What's undeniable is the resilience of these traditions. When a Wiradjuri teenager in Melbourne beats out a songline rhythm on clapsticks during NAIDOC Week, or a Tiwi Islands filmmaker adapts Dreamtime stories into animations, they're proving that oral traditions can evolve without breaking their connection to the past. The land still sings, and for those who know how to listen, the Dreamtime is never truly gone, just waiting to be heard anew. Golden and fragrant, with a braided surface cradling crimson-dyed eggs, Tsoureki isn't just Greek Easter bread. It's a loaf that carries the whispers of Demeter's spring festivals and the weight of Christ's resurrection in every swirl. This sweet, saffron-kissed bread might grace modern bakery shelves, but its roots tangle deep into pre-Christian soil, where ancient Greeks baked similar braided loaves to honor the earth's rebirth. The three-strand plate, originally a tribute to the triple goddess Maiden, Mother, and Crone celebrated during spring equinox rites, the red eggs nestled in its folds. Once symbols of Persephone's return from the underworld, now reinterpreted as Christ's blood and the sealed tomb. The transformation from pagan offering to Christian sacrament is a masterclass in cultural adaptation. When Byzantine missionaries spread through Greece, they didn't erase old customs, they baptized them. The braids became a nod to the Holy Trinity. The aromatic molopy and mastiha resins in the dough mirrored the spices used to anoint Christ's body, and those fiery eggs turned into a visual sermon. Cracking them represents the resurrection shattering death's grip. Every ingredient holds meaning. The flour's purity reflects Lent's end, the butter forbidden during fasting signals celebration's return, and the citrus zest. A fragrant reminder that salvation tastes as bright as a Mediterranean dawn. Baking Tsoureki is still treated as sacred alchemy. In villages across Greece, grandmothers insist the dough must be kneaded clockwise, following the sun's path while whispering prayers. The braiding requires 3 separate risings, mirroring the 3 days Christ spent entombed, and the eggs aren't casually placed, they're tucked in crosses formed by the dough, turning each loaf into a tiny edible shrine. Even the timing is precise, baked on Holy Thursday to be ready for the midnight resurrection feast, when families break their fast with slices dipped in warm milk. Science now explains why this bread feels miraculous. The spice blend, including mastiha, a resin exclusive to Chios Island, contains compounds shown to reduce stress hormones. The elaborate braiding traps air pockets, creating a texture that stays fresh for days. But for Greek families worldwide, Tsoureki's magic runs deeper than chemistry. Armenian refugees brought it to Istanbul, where it's now called Tsoureki. Syrian immigrants introduced it to Buenos Aires cafes. In New Jersey kitchens, third-generation kids FaceTime grandparents in Thessaloniki to perfect the twist. The strands weave more than flour, they braid together generations, migrations, and the stubborn persistence of hope. Every spring, as hands young and old shape the dough, they're not just baking bread. They're kneading history. In a Balinese village at dawn, a teenage girl sits motionless as a priest raises a metal file to her teeth, not as punishment, but as sacred transformation. This is Metatar, the tooth-filing ceremony marking the passage from childhood to adulthood in Bali's Hindu traditions. Far from mere dentistry, the ritual is believed to file away 6 metaphorical enemies lurking in every human: desire, greed, anger, confusion, jealousy, and arrogance. The canines, called fang teeth in Balinese, are targeted specifically, once symbols of animalistic instincts, now smoothed into human refinement. Imagine a rite where cosmetic alteration becomes spiritual surgery, and every stroke of the file is a step toward enlightenment. The ceremony unfolds like a theatrical purification. Days before, families construct elaborate pavilions from bamboo and coconut leaves, turning homes into temporary temples. The teenager, dressed in gold-threaded traditional garb, is carried in a procession to the sound of gamelan gongs, treated like royalty for a day. Relatives place offerings of fruit and flowers at their feet, while priests chant mantras invoking divine blessings. Then comes the climactic moment. As the file touches enamel, the vibrations aren't just physical, they're said to resonate through the soul, shaking loose negative energies. No anesthetic is used, enduring the discomfort is part of the spiritual test. Modern Bali has woven this ancient practice into contemporary life with striking adaptability. In urban Denpasar, dental clinics now offer sterile filings alongside traditional methods, blending Ayurvedic principles with medical hygiene. Some families combine Metatar with Western-style Sweet 16 parties, serving ceremonial rice cakes next to birthday cupcakes. Even tourists can witness tooth filings at cultural centers, though participants stress these are authentic rituals, not performances. One dentist in Ubud explained how she files teeth medically by day, then assists priests in ceremonies by night, seeing no contradiction between science and spirituality. What's fascinating is how Metatar reflects Bali's unique Hindu worldview. Unlike mainland Hinduism focused on caste, Balinese spirituality emphasizes balance between gods and demons, humans and nature, even the animal and divine within ourselves. The filed teeth become a lifelong reminder. True adulthood isn't about age, but mastering one's baser instincts. Teenagers who once dreaded the ceremony now document theirs on Instagram, hashtagging spiritual transformation alongside selfies. The files may be stainless steel instead of iron now, the offerings packaged in biodegradable materials, but the core endures, proof that some traditions don't just survive modernity, they converse with it, creating something timeless. Across the misty hills of Wales, where the Welsh language itself seems to sing in the wind, there's a tradition that turns poetry into a high-stakes spectator sport, the Eisteddfod. Picture this, a sea of people hushed in anticipation as a robed bard steps forward, his words not just recited but performed with the intensity of an Olympic athlete. These competitive festivals of literature and music aren't just cultural events. They're living echoes of ancient Celtic Druidic gatherings, where bards were keepers of history, legal arbiters, and wielders of words so powerful they could supposedly curse enemies or heal the sick with a single verse. The roots stretch back over 1,000 years to pre-Christian Wales, where Druids held ceremonial assemblies called gorsedaw, open-air meetings where laws were decreed. disputes settled, and knowledge passed down through intricate oral poetry. Bards underwent rigorous training, memorizing thousands of lines of verse in strict metrical patterns like Singhanid, where every syllable's sound and stress follows mathematical precision. Their status was near mystical. A skilled bard could elevate a king's reputation or destroy a rival's with satirical verses called ordlau. When Christianity arrived, these traditions didn't vanish. They adapted, with bards becoming chroniclers of saints and biblical stories. Their competitions now held under the shadow of church spires rather than oak groves. Fast forward to the 18th century, when industrialization threatened to erase the Welsh language itself. Enter Iolo Morgannwg, a stonemason with a vivid imagination and a passion for his heritage. In 1792, he staged a flamboyant revival of the Gorsedd ceremony, complete with neo-Druidic robes, sword rituals, and a fabricated but inspiring backstory linking it to King Arthur's court. What began as romantic nostalgia caught fire. By 1860, the National Eisteddfod was born, a travelling festival that still alternates between North and South Wales, drawing over 150,000 attendees annually. Today's Eisteddfod is a dazzling hybrid of ancient and modern. The most coveted prize, the chairing of the bard, where the winning poet is literally enthroned in an elaborately carved wooden chair before a roaring crowd. The judging process remains deliciously dramatic. Anonymous submissions are read aloud by a herald, while the panel deliberates in full view, tension mounting until the archdruid, yes, that's still the title, dramatically announces the winner with a blast from the ceremonial horn. But here's where it gets fascinating. While the rituals feel medieval, the content is vibrantly contemporary. Poems tackle climate change, mental health, and immigration alongside traditional odes to landscapes. Teen rappers compete in Welsh-language hip-hop battles downstairs, while upstairs, harpists perform melodies notated in the 14th century. The festival's survival is a testament to cultural stubbornness. During the 19th century Welsh Not era, when children were punished for speaking their native tongue in schools, the Eisteddfod became a covert act of resistance. Now it's a powerhouse fueling Wales' linguistic revival. 60% of attendees are learners or second language speakers. Pop stars like Dafydd Iwan perform protest anthems beside folk choirs, and the learners' tent buzzes with toddlers and retirees alike mastering phrases like POBLWC. Good luck. Even the costumes tell a story. The iconic blue, green, and white Druidic robes, designed in the 1800s, are now worn by everyone from schoolteachers to tech CEOs during the ceremony, a sartorial middle finger to those who once called Welsh a dying language. What makes the Eisteddfod extraordinary isn't just its age, but its adaptability. A 7th grader composing her first in Glyn a strict form stanza on an iPad. A retired miner winning the crown for a free verse poem about COVID grief. Tourists gaping as a sword-wielding archdruid invokes the spirits of the land. All are part of the same unbroken thread. The microphones may be wireless now, the live stream's global, but when the crowd erupts as the new bard takes their seat, the roar carries the same triumph as it did 1,000 years ago. Proof that some traditions don't just endure, they evolve, they rebel, and most of all, they refuse to be silenced. Legend has it that in the highlands of 9th century Ethiopia, a young goatherd named Kaldi noticed his flock dancing with unusual energy after nibbling bright red berries from a certain shrub. Curious, he tasted the mysterious fruit himself and soon found his weariness replaced by exhilaration. Those berries were the first coffee beans ever consumed, and the ritual born from their discovery would grow into one of humanity's most elaborate caffeine ceremonies, a 3-act performance of aroma, connection, and tradition that still defines Ethiopian hospitality today. The Ethiopian coffee ceremony transforms brewing into theater. It begins with the host, traditionally a woman in a white cotton dress called a habsha kemes, spreading fresh grass and flowers across the floor, symbolizing nature's abundance. Green coffee beans are rinsed, then roasted in a flat pan over charcoal, filling the air with fragrances so intoxicating they're said to lure neighbors without invitation. As the beans darken, they're ground with a mortar and pestle, the rhythmic pounding syncing with the bubbling of the jabina, a round-bottomed clay pot with a straw lid that's as much art as utensil. But this isn't a quick espresso shot. The ceremony unfolds in 3 deliberate rounds called a bol, tona, and baraka, each serving carrying its own significance. A bol, the first round, is the strongest brew, served black in tiny handleless cups called sini. Its bitterness isn't just flavor, it's a prompt for raw, honest conversation where disputes are settled and truth spoken. Once cups are drained, the grounds are boiled again for tona, a milder serving that eases into storytelling and laughter. The final round, baraka, meaning blessing, is the sweetest, often flavored with spices or honey, sealing the gathering with goodwill. To refuse any cup is deeply offensive, as each round represents a progressive deepening of bonds. Modern Ethiopia has carried this ritual into the 21st century with striking adaptability. In Addis Ababa's bustling cafes, baristas perform abbreviated versions for tourists, while rural households still dedicate 3 hours daily to the full ceremony. Young professionals host coffee Netflix sessions, streaming shows between rounds. Scientists at Addis Ababa University study the ceremony's social psychology, confirming what Ethiopians have always known. The slow, shared ritual reduces cortisol levels more effectively than solitary caffeine fixes. Even the jabina has evolved, with electric versions used in offices, though purists insist charcoal's smoky essence is irreplaceable. What makes this tradition extraordinary isn't just its age, but its insistence that coffee isn't a commodity, it's a covenant. When a grandmother in Harar lifts the jabina high, pouring a thin stream to test temperature, she's reenacting movements practiced since the days of medieval kings. The popcorn or incense, often served alongside aunt snacks, they're sensory bookmarks ensuring participants stay present. In a world of grab and go lattes, the Ethiopian ceremony stands as a rebellion, a reminder that the best conversations, like the finest coffee, can't be rushed. Every aromatic sip carries the ghost of Chaldee's first discovery, that some fruits don't just wake the body, they awaken community. The ground shakes, a thunderous slap against bare chests echoes like a cracking whip, followed by a roar so visceral it raises goosebumps even through a screen. This is the haka, the Maori war dance that has transcended its origins to become one of the most electrifying cultural performances on Earth. Far more than a display of aggression, this rhythmic symphony of stomps, chants, and rolling eyes carries centuries of history, spirituality, and tribal identity in every movement. Its roots stretch back to the Polynesian ancestors of New Zealand's Maori people, who brought sacred dances across the Pacific, evolving them into a multifaceted tradition that could terrify enemies, honor guests, or commune with the gods. Originally performed as a pre-battle ritual, the haka served as both psychological warfare and spiritual preparation. Warriors would paint their faces with sacred markings, widen their eyes to show the white's pukana, and slap their bodies to represent the removal of fear. The words Wayata chanted during the haka weren't mere threats, they were invocations. Some called upon ancestral spirits for strength, like the famous Kamate haka composed by Te Roparoha in the early 19th century after he narrowly escaped death by hiding in a Kumara pit. Others recounted tribal genealogy, asserting the dancers' connection to the land and their right to defend it. The collective energy of the haka was believed to summon mana, a supernatural force that could tip battles in their favor. But here's where the haka defies expectation. It was never solely about war. Maori communities performed hakas to welcome revered guests, to mourn at funerals, even to celebrate weddings. The same gestures that once intimidated foes, the protruding tongues, wetero symboling defiance, the trembling hands mimicking weapon strikes, could express joy or respect when context shifted. This duality reveals a deeper truth. The haka is a language of the body, its meaning shaped by intention. A funeral haka might use slow, deliberate motions to convey grief, while a celebratory version bursts with exuberant leaps. Modernity has only amplified the haka's power. When New Zealand's All Blacks rugby team adopted ka mate as their pre-game ritual in the early 20th century, they unknowingly globalized a sacred tradition. Today, opponents facing the haka on the pitch describe it as utterly unnerving, a moment where sport transforms into something primal. Yet the dance has also become a bridge. At Prince Harry's wedding to Meghan Markle, a Maori contingent performed a haka of blessing, their voices filling St. George's Chapel with Polynesian harmonies. Universities from Kyoto to California teach it as a tool for teamwork and emotional expression. Controversy sometimes follows. When non-Maori groups perform hakas without understanding their significance, it sparks debates about cultural appropriation. Purists argue the dance loses its soul when stripped of context, while others see imitation as homage. What's undeniable is the haka's resilience. In 2022, when New Zealand celebrated Tsoureki, the Maori New Year, as an official holiday for the first time, hakas rang out across cities usually dominated by Western traditions. School children now learn both the movements and the stories behind them, ensuring the next generation understands that every stomp isn't just footwork, it's the heartbeat of ancestors still pulsing strong. Laughter echoes through massive beer tents, the clinking of steins punctuating oompa bands playing centuries-old folk tunes. This is Oktoberfest, the 16-day Bavarian extravaganza that draws 7 million visitors annually. But beneath the foam-topped mask rugs and pretzel-laden tables lies a tradition far older than its official 1810 inception, one that stretches back to pagan harvest rites when Germanic tribes celebrated the autumnal equinox with bonfires and offerings to fertility gods. The festival as we know it began as a royal wedding celebration for Crown Prince Ludwig and Princess Therese of Saxe-Hildburghausen, where horse races and agricultural shows entertained Munich citizens. Yet the seeds had been planted long before. Medieval markets held after the summer harvest, where farmers traded livestock, drank strong beer brewed for winter storage, and danced in tracht, the traditional dress now known globally as lederhosen and dirndls. Those iconic outfits carry hidden histories. Lederhosen, originally worn by alpine peasants and hunters for durability, became a political statement in the 19th century when Bavarians adopted them as symbols of regional pride against Prussian influence. The intricate embroidery on suspenders often denoted home villages, while horn buttons signaled marital status. Dirndls, with their tight bodices and apron knots, evolved from servants' workwear into fashion statements. The side a woman tied her apron bow supposedly indicated her availability: left for single, right for taken, center for virgin, back for widow. Today, locals still debate whether urbanites wearing €700 designer lederhosen honor tradition or dilute it, even as Japanese tourists master the art of dirndl lacing for their Munich pilgrimages. What began as a local horse race mushroomed into a global phenomenon through perfect historical timing. The 19th century railway boom brought visitors from across Europe, while brewers capitalized on the event to promote their Märzen, a strong amber lager aged in March, März, and tapped in autumn. By the 1890s, carnival rides spun alongside beer halls, and the festival survived wartime cancellations to emerge as a symbol of post-war German joy. Now, 14 massive tents, some seating up to 10,000, serve strictly regulated Munich brewed beer, poured by waitresses who can carry 12 one-liter steins at once. The first keg gets tapped by Munich's mayor shouting, "Oh, zapft is, it's tapped," a ritual dating to 1950, while the horse races that started it all still occur opening weekend, though overshadowed by roller coasters and LED-lit Ferris wheels. Oktoberfest's secret isn't just scale, it's symbiosis between ancient and modern. The same breweries that supplied Ludwig's wedding now invest millions in tent architecture, from the Fish of Roni's fish-shaped bar to the Hacker Peace Score's celestial ceiling murals. Traditionalists perform Schuhplattler folk dances in the mornings before DJs take over at night. Even the food marries old and new. Half-meter-long bretzels share menus with sushi, while roast chicken recipes from 1820 compete with vegan schnitzel. Perhaps most remarkably, Oktoberfest has spawned countless imitations from Brazil to China, yet Munich's version retains an authenticity that defies commercialization. When Bavarians in tract ride the U-Bahn to their Sienwis grounds, passing backpackers in cheap imitation costumes, they're not just attending a party, they're walking through layers of history where every sip, stitch, and song tells a story of resilience and reinvention. The scent of grilled mackerel mingles with sweet persimmons as a family gathers around a table laden with steaming rice, savory meats, and neatly stacked fruits, each dish arranged with geometric precision. This isn't just a meal, it's Jesa, Korea's ancestral rite where the living feed the dead, a tradition stretching back over 2,000 years to Confucian principles that still shape modern Korean identity. More than mere memorial, these ceremonies are acts of filial piety so central to Korean values that even today, executives might leave board meetings early to prepare offerings, and K-pop idols post apologies if they miss rites for deceased grandparents. At the heart of Jesa lies the belief that ancestors remain active participants in family fortunes, needing regular nourishment and respect. The ritual follows a sacred choreography. The eldest male descendant, dressed in hanbok, bows deeply before a memorial tablet while offering wine in precise 3-pour increments. Bowls of rice stand tall like mountains, their chopsticks planted vertically, a gesture otherwise taboo at Korean tables, reserved solely for the dead. Fruits face stem side toward the ancestors, and hot soups must steam throughout the ceremony, proving the family's devotion through attentive detail. After inviting spirits to dine via rhythmic chanting, participants wait silently, interpreting subtle signs. A flickering candle might signal ancestral approval, while untouched food could prompt souls searching about familial discord. Chuseok, Korea's autumn harvest festival, elevates Jesa to national spectacle. Millions journey to ancestral hometowns, creating traffic jams worthy of record books, all to kneel before graves with weed-pulling tools and offering trays. Modern twists emerge. Online memorial services stream rites for diaspora families, while supermarkets sell pre-arranged Jesa fruit baskets, though purists scoff at store-bought piety. Yet even as Korea rockets into the tech future, these rituals anchor identity. A sole stockbroker might analyze crypto trends by day, but still consult a fortune teller to ensure his Jesa meets align with his grandfather's zodiac sign. Debates simmer about Jesa's place in increasingly secular Korea. Younger generations balk at patriarchal aspects. Why must sons lead rites when daughters often prepare them? LGBTQ+ Koreans wrestle with exclusion from family rituals. Some opt for simplified ceremonies or donate offerings to food banks, merging tradition with social good. Yet innovators find middle ground. One sole startup offers Jesa consultants who guide multicultural families through hybrid rites blending Korean and foreign customs. Even atheists often participate, valuing cultural continuity over literal belief, proof that honoring ancestors can transcend spirituality to become a dance of memory, gratitude, and belonging. What endures is the ritual's emotional core. When a grandmother teaches her granddaughter to fold jeon pancakes for the altar, she's passing down more than recipe, she's stitching generations together with hands sticky with honey and soy. Corporate titans bowing in Armani suits beside farmers in mud-spattered boots reveal a shared truth. In Korea's breakneck present, Jesa remains the pause button, the moment when the past isn't gone, just waiting at the table, chopsticks upright, ready to be remembered. The air crackles with the feverish rhythm of tambourines as dancers spin wildly, their feet a blur against cobblestones. This is the tarantella, Italy's legendary folk dance that transforms pain into ecstasy. What looks like a joyful celebration holds darker roots, an ancient exorcism ritual believed to cure the venomous bite of the tarantula. Medieval peasants in Italy's Puglia region swore that when the wolf spider struck, victims would convulse in manic despair until musicians played a specific melody, compelling them to dance for hours, even days, sweating out the poison through frenzied movement. The dance wasn't entertainment, it was survival, a sonic antidote woven into muscle memory. Dig deeper, and the tarantella's lineage stretches even further back, to the Dionysian rites of ancient Greece. Just as Maenads whirled in trance states to honor the god of wine and liberation, tarantella dancers sought transcendence through motion. The rapid 6/8 time signature, punctuated by tambourines and accordions, mirrors the pulse of a racing heart, deliberately inducing altered states. Scholars suggest the spider was merely a scapegoat. The real poison was the suffocating pressures of peasant life, and the dance became sanctioned catharsis. Women, especially, used it to temporarily shatter societal chains, their movements hips swaying, skirts flaring, flirting with impropriety under the guise of medical necessity. By the Renaissance, the ritual had formalized into the tarantismo phenomenon. Healing circles formed where musicians adapted melodies to individual sufferers, believing each bite demanded a unique musical prescription. The afflicted, called tarantotti, would collapse after dancing, claiming visions of the Virgin Mary or spider-shaped shadows fleeing their bodies. Church authorities grudgingly tolerated the practice, folding it into feast days like the festival of Saints Peter and Paul, where spiritual ecstasy and folk medicine blurred. Modern Naples has reclaimed the tarantella as cultural treasure, though its edges have softened. Wedding parties now dance the tamariotta, a flirtatious variant where partners mimic courtship through playful kicks and teasing gestures. Therapists in Rome use tarantella rhythms for stress relief, noting how the compulsive movement releases endorphins. Even the spider's role has shifted. Puglian artisans craft intricate tarantula-shaped chocolates, sweetening the creature's fearsome legacy. Yet in remote villages, elderly women still recall the old ways, humming melodies that once drew poison from blood, proof that some dances aren't just steps. They're spells cast in rhythm and sweat, turning agony into art. Beneath the flickering glow of oil lamps, a woman sways to the hypnotic rhythm of tambourines and drums, her movements growing more erratic as the music intensifies. This is the Zar ceremony, an ancient Egyptian healing ritual where the spiritual and physical worlds collide. Originating in Nubia and Sudan before spreading along the Nile, this enigmatic practice blends Islamic mysticism with African animism, creating a space where possessed individuals negotiate with invisible spirits through dance, sacrifice, and trance. For centuries, Zar served as both clinic and confessional for women excluded from formal religious spaces, offering liberation through possession rather than repression through dogma. The ceremony unfolds like a cosmic marketplace. Practitioners believe disruptive spirits called asiyad, or lords, cause illness, infertility, or misfortune when ignored. A Zar leader, usually a respected female sheikha, diagnoses the spirit's identity through pulse readings or dream interpretations, then orchestrates a ritual to appease it. Different spirits demand distinct offerings: red cloth and henna for the flirtatious Aisha Kandisha, cigar smoke and whiskey for the rebellious Ethiopian warrior spirits, even toy soldiers for childlike entities. As musicians play spirit-specific rhythms, participants enter trance states, their bodies becoming vessels for negotiation. The possessed might speak in tongues, display superhuman strength, or recount past life traumas, all clues to the spirit's demands. Zar's survival is a testament to cultural camouflage. Officially banned in Egypt since the 19th century as un-Islamic, these ceremonies persist behind closed doors, their rituals discreetly woven into mainstream Sufi festivals or disguised as birthday parties. In Cairo's backstreets, Tsar practitioners use coded language. Having guests over means hosting spirits, while special tea refers to ritual herbs. Modern adaptations include WhatsApp groups for scheduling ceremonies and YouTube tutorials for traditional drum patterns, allowing the tradition to thrive in plain sight. Scientific studies now explore Tsar's therapeutic mechanisms. Psychologists at Ain Shams University note parallels between trance states and EMDR therapy, both reprocessing trauma through rhythmic stimulation. Anthropologists document how Tsar provides agency for marginalized groups, divorced women, domestic workers, or LGBTQ+ individuals whose suffering is often dismissed by society. Yet controversy lingers. Conservative clerics condemn it as heresy, while feminists debate whether spirit possession empowers women or merely offers escapism from systemic oppression. What's undeniable is Tsar's emotional resonance. When a Coptic Christian woman in Alexandria sways beside her Muslim neighbor during a ceremony, both united by shared spirits, or when a young mother emerges from trance claiming her chronic pain has lifted, the ritual reveals its true power, not as superstition, but as theater of healing, where the cure lies not in erasing the unseen, but in learning to dance with it. Steam rises in thick waves as birch branches crackle against scorching stones, their fragrant oils releasing with each splash of water. This is the Finnish sauna, a 2,000-year-old ritual that's far more than a steamy retreat. It's a cornerstone of national identity, a sacred space where business deals are sealed, babies are birthed, and the soul itself seems to sweat out life's burdens. The earliest saunas were little more than smoke-filled pits dug into hillsides, where hunter-gatherers would gather after long winters, the soot-blackened walls absorbing stories and secrets. These Savio saunas had no chimneys. Smoke would linger until ventilated, leaving an earthy aroma that modern enthusiasts still chase in rare traditional versions. For Finns, the sauna isn't just about heat, it's about rhythm. The cycle of heating, cooling, and resting mirrors the natural world's balance, a philosophy baked into every step. First, the lurili, the sacred steam created by throwing water on volcanic rocks, rises to envelop bathers, its quality judged by how softly it kisses the skin. Then comes the vita, a bundle of fresh birch twigs used to gently beat the body, stimulating circulation and releasing forest-fresh oils. Finally, the cool down, a plunge into icy lakes or rolling in snow, a shock to the system believed to boost immunity and mental clarity. This isn't mere tradition, it's science-backed therapy. Studies at the University of Eastern Finland link regular sauna use to reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, thanks to the heart-pumping effects of extreme heat followed by rapid cooling. Saunas have long doubled as Finland's most egalitarian spaces. Parliament members unwind beside farmers, CEOs negotiate with startup founders, all naked, all equal under the lurili's embrace. In the 1930s, makeshift saunas served as maternity wards in remote areas, the sterile heat providing ideal conditions for childbirth. Soldiers during the Winter War retreated to mobile saunas for warmth and camaraderie, and today, nearly every Finnish home has one, from sleek urban apartments to rustic lakeside cottages. The numbers astonish. 5.3 million Finns share 3.2 million saunas, proving their cultural weight rivals even the most ubiquitous modern comforts. Yet modernization hasn't diluted the ritual's soul. Electric saunas may dominate cities, but purists still trek to the archipelago's smoke saunas, where the aroma of burning alder wood infuses every pore. International visitors might experience sauna sommeliers in Helsinki, who curate sessions with specific temperatures, humidity levels, and even playlist pairings. And then there's the growing global phenomenon of sauna diplomacy. Finnish ambassadors proudly introduce heads of state to the tradition, believing shared sweat fosters better negotiations than stiff conference rooms. What makes Finnish sauna culture extraordinary isn't its age, but its adaptability. Teenagers live stream sauna sessions with friends. Grandparents teach toddlers to respect the sacred silence of the lurali, and tech startups hold brainstorming sessions mid-steam. The tools evolved. Digital thermometers replace instinctive rock tapping tests. Apps track optimal lurali intervals, but the essence remains, a space where vulnerability, community, and nature collide. When a Finn says sauna is the pharmacy of the poor, they're not boasting about heat tolerance. They're honoring a ritual that heals, unites, and endures, proving some traditions don't just survive the test of time, they thrive by becoming indispensable to the rhythm of life itself. The scent of marigolds hangs thick in the air as families gather around candlelit altars, their hands carefully arranging sugar skulls alongside framed photographs. This is Dia de los Muertos, Mexico's Day of the Dead, a vibrant celebration where grief and joy intertwine, and the boundary between the living and the departed dissolves for 2 magical days. Far from a summer memorial, this tradition pulses with music, feasting, and riotous color, its roots tangled deep in Aztec soil long before Spanish galleons ever reached these shores. Picture the Valley of Mexico in the 14th century, where the Aztecs honored Mictlantecuhtli, their goddess of the underworld, during the month-long festival of Mictlantecuhtli. Death wasn't an end but a continuation of life's cycle, and families welcomed returning spirits with offerings of tamales, cocoa, and the golden cempasúchil flower marigolds whose vibrant hue and pungent aroma were believed to guide souls home. Skulls, far from macabre symbols, represented rebirth. The Aztecs kept real skulls as trophies displayed on wooden racks called tzompantli, honoring warriors and sacrificed victims alike. Then came the Spanish conquest, with Catholic missionaries determined to replace pagan rites with All Saints and All Souls days. But rather than vanish, the traditions merged like colors on an ofrenda. Indigenous offerings of food became Christianized as soul cakes, while Mictlantecuhtli transformed into La Catrina, the elegant skeletal figure popularized by artist José Guadalupe Posada in the early 20th century, now an icon of the festival. The result, a seamless fusion where Aztec cosmology dances with Catholic liturgy, and November 1st honors deceased children, Dia de los Inocentes, while November 2nd welcomes adult spirits. Every element on a modern ofrenda whispers symbolism. The sugar skulls or calaveras aren't just sweets, their intricate icing designs mirror the personality of the departed, with names piped boldly across the forehead. Pan de Muerto, the anise-scented bread adorned with bone-shaped dough, represents both the Eucharist and the Aztec tradition of grain offerings. Salt purifies souls, while water quenches their thirst after the long journey. And those marigold petals, they form luminous pathways from grave sites to doorways, their solar brilliance a beacon in the spirit world's darkness. UNESCO recognition of Day of the Dead as intangible cultural heritage in 2003 cemented its global fame, but local nuances still surprise. In Mixquic, families spend all night in candlelit cemeteries, while in Oaxaca, giant sand tapestries called tapites depict skeletal figures alongside pop culture icons. Mexican immigrants have carried the tradition worldwide. Los Angeles hosts massive processions blending holly, wood gloss with ancestral reverence, and Filipino communities in California incorporate their own All Saints customs, creating hybrid celebrations. What makes this tradition extraordinary is its emotional alchemy, how it transforms mourning into celebration without denying loss's weight. A child decorating her grandfather's sugar skull might giggle while hearing stories about his mischief. Teenagers paint their faces as skeletons not to mock death, but to laugh in its face, asserting that love outlasts even the grave. When Mexican families say, "The dead are only dead if we forget them," they're not reciting a proverb, they're upholding a promise, one marigold path, one candied skull, one heartfelt memory at a time. Moonlight dances on the water as thousands of flickering lanterns drift downstream, each delicate vessel carrying whispered prayers and tangled lotus stems. This is Loy Krathong, Thailand's festival of light that transforms rivers into liquid constellations every 12th lunar month. Far more than a tourist spectacle, this ancient ritual weaves together threads of Brahmanic tradition, Buddhist reverence, and agrarian gratitude, creating a night where water isn't just respected, it's worshipped as Frami Konka, the goddess who gives life and washes away sorrows. The ceremony's roots sink deep into Thailand's pre-Buddhist past, when Mon and Khmer peoples floated offerings to appease river spirits during the rainy season's end. Hindu Brahmanic influences added layers of symbolism. The Krathong's circular shape mirrors the cosmos, while the candle represents Mount Meru's divine axis. Even the act of releasing the vessel carries triple meaning: releasing negativity, karma, honoring Buddha's footprint left on the Narmada River's shore, and thanking waterways for sustaining crops. Traditional krathongs were crafted from banana tree sections or spider lily plants, materials that nourish aquatic life as they decompose, embodying the festival's ecological mindfulness. Northern Thailand's Ipeng celebration elevates the ritual to dizzying heights. While Loy Krathong focuses on water, Ipeng honors air, with thousands of paper lanterns Kam Loy released simultaneously into the night sky. The effect is otherworldly, a golden galaxy ascending as flames heat the lantern's bamboo and rice paper frames. Chiang Mai's synchronized mass launch at the Three Kings Monument has become iconic, but few realize its origins as a Lanna Kingdom tradition to dispel misfortune. Each lantern carries scribbled hopes, from students praying for exam success to farmers begging deliverance from drought. The interplay between earth, water, and sky during these dual festivals creates a sacred symmetry, with floating krathongs below mirroring drifting lanterns above. Modern Loy Krathong balances spectacle with sustainability. Environmental campaigns encourage biodegradable krathongs free from plastic or styrofoam, while some communities replace candles with LED lights to prevent wildfires. Urban temples host krathong-making workshops where children learn to fold banana leaves into lotus shapes, threading jasmine buds between folds, the most breathtaking innovation. Bangkok's waterways now see illuminated drone shows alongside traditional floats, their digital formations depicting water goddesses and mythical Naga serpents, a fusion of silicon and spirituality. What makes this festival extraordinary is its emotional alchemy. A banker in Bangkok and a rice farmer in Isan might kneel side by side at the same canal, both pressing palms together in a way as their krathongs bob away. Tourists scribble wishes in unfamiliar scripts beside elderly Thais murmuring centuries-old prayers. When the candlelight catches the ripples for one luminous night, divisions dissolve, just as the water receives all offerings equally, be they crafted by royal hands or a child's clumsy fingers. In a world racing toward the future, Loy Krathong remains a fleeting, radiant pause, proof that some traditions don't just endure, they light the way forward. The candlelight flickers across a table set with crisp white linen, where plates of unleavened bread and bitter herbs wait beside an ornate silver cup. This is the Passover Seder, a 3,000-year-old ritual meal that turns Jewish homes into time machines every spring. More than just a retelling of the Exodus story, this layered ceremony preserves ancient Hebrew customs with astonishing precision while adapting to every corner of the diaspora, from the clay floors of Ethiopian villages to the skyscraper apartments of Manhattan. At its core, the Seder is a masterclass in memory engineering, using taste, touch, and sound to make an ancient liberation feel immediate, urgent, and deeply personal. Every element on the Seder plate is an edible artifact. The matzah, cracked, flat bread baked in 18 minutes or less, recreates the haste of fleeing slaves who couldn't wait for dough to rise. Bitter herbs maror like horseradish bring tears to the eyes, embodying the sharpness of bondage. Charaset, a sweet paste of apples and nuts, mimics the mortar Israelites used building Pharaoh's cities, transforming oppression's symbol into something surprisingly delicious. Even the salt water, representing tears, serves a dual purpose. It's also the brine that preserves food, hinting at how suffering can lead to resilience. What's extraordinary is how these traditions morphed across continents. Ethiopian Jews, isolated for centuries, incorporated unique elements like the Doro Wat stew as their chariset, using spices from the Horn of Africa. Spanish conversos secretly replaced wine with almond milk during the Inquisition to avoid detection. In America, the Maxwell House Haggadah Yes from the coffee company became a surprise bestseller, standardizing the ritual for 20th century immigrants. Modern sedders might include plague kits with plastic frogs or discuss contemporary slavery alongside biblical narratives, proving the ritual's ability to absorb new meanings without losing its ancient core. The sedder's genius lies in its participatory design. Children hunt for the afikomen, hidden matzah, to keep them engaged, while the 4 questions traditionally asked by the youngest present ensure generational continuity. The spilling of wine for each plague reminds participants that liberation came at a cost. Even the reclining posture, mimicking ancient Roman nobility, turns physical comfort into a political statement: we are free now. From Silicon Valley engineers using apps to time matzah baking to Ukrainian refugees holding sedders in bomb shelters, this ritual doesn't merely survive, it thrives by making ancient struggles vibrantly alive. When a family sings Dayenu today, they're not just honoring ancestors, they're adding their voices to an unbroken chain of resilience, one crunchy bite of matzah at a time. 2 voices intertwine in a mesmerizing back and forth, deep breaths, guttural pulses, and rhythmic inhalations that mimic the wind howling across tundra, the crunch of snow underfoot, or the playful barks of sled dogs. This is Katajak, the Inuit throat-singing tradition where women stand face to face, gripping each other's arms as they transform their breath into an improvised soundscape of the Arctic world. Far from mere entertainment, this ancient duet was once the heartbeat of nomadic life, practiced while men hunted to pass time and teach girls to listen, really listen, to the symphony of their environment. Each match ended when one singer burst into laughter or ran out of breath, a light-hearted competition that carried the weight of cultural preservation. The tradition's origins are as organic as the sounds themselves. In a land where winter darkness stretches for months and blizzards roar across the ice, mimicking nature wasn't just art, it was survival. A skilled throat singer could replicate the creak of sea ice warning of thin spots or the distant rumble of avalanches. The sounds were practical mnemonics, audio maps passed between generations. Some rhythms mirrored the gait of caribou herds, helping hunters anticipate movement patterns. Others echoed the bubbling of meltwater under spring ice, signaling safe travel routes. For Inuit elders, throat singing wasn't just music, it was an oral encyclopedia of the land's secrets coded in breath and vibration. Then came the missionaries. By the early 20th century, Christian clergy across Canada's Arctic condemned throat singing as devil's music, banning it in residential schools where Inuit children were forcibly assimilated. The consequences were devastating. Entire generations grew up severed from the practice, their mothers and grandmothers silenced by fear. For decades, Katajak survived only in whispers, practiced furtively in remote camps or not at all. The ban wasn't just about suppressing art, it was an attack on indigenous ways of knowing, an attempt to sever the tether between people and place. But the Arctic wind never stopped singing. In the 1980s, a cultural reawakening swept through Nunavut and Quebec's Nunavik region. Elders who still remembered the old ways began teaching younger women, often consulting archival recordings made by ethnographers in the 1940s. Groups like the Nunavik-based Kalanot revived the tradition, performing at festivals where audiences gasped at the otherworldly sounds. Today, throat singing has become a defiant emblem of resilience. Inuit teenagers post TikTok challenges blending traditional techniques with hip-hop beats, while activists use the practice in protests against resource extraction on ancestral lands. Modern innovators are expanding the art form while honoring its roots. Tanya Tagak, a Polaris Prize-winning artist, stunned the music world by performing solo throat singing, traditionally always a duet, and collaborating with symphonies. Her Grammy-nominated album, Animism, transforms Katajak into a visceral protest against violence toward indigenous women, her growls and gasps evoking both trauma and triumph. Meanwhile, in classrooms across the North, children as young as 5 learn throat singing alongside math and science, their tiny voices mimicking geese and glaciers with startling precision. What makes this revival extraordinary is its intimacy. Unlike grand spectacles or staged performances, throat singing thrives in close quarters, 2 people sharing breath, their sounds intertwining like the rhythms of the land itself. When an Inuit grandmother teaches her granddaughter to shape the rasp of a raven's wings with her vocal cords, she's not just passing down a song. She's ensuring that even as permafrost thaws and glaciers retreat, the voice of the Arctic will never fall silent. Beneath the golden Armenian sun, a group of women kneel around a circular pit, their hands pressing delicate sheets of dough against the scorching walls. This isn't just baking. It's a sacred act of communion with the earth itself. Lavash, the paper-thin bread that has sustained Armenian communities for 6,000 years, carries more than flour and water. It holds the whispered secrets of Neolithic ovens, the sweat of generations, and the unbroken thread of matriarchal knowledge recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage. The process unfolds like a ritual. Wheat harvested from the same fields tilled by Eurasian farmers is ground into flour, mixed with mountain spring water, and rolled into sheets so thin they could float on a breeze. But the true magic happens in the Tonya, a charcoal-lined clay oven sunk into the ground like a volcanic mouth, where dough transforms into bread in mere seconds, blistering under temperatures that would scorch modern appliances. Every step brims with symbolism. The circular shape mirrors the sun worshipped by ancient Armenians, while the 4 holes traditionally poked into the dough represent the seasons. Women work in teams, their synchronized movements a ballet of survival. One stretches the dough, another slaps it onto the Tonya's walls, a third uses a cushion to retrieve the perfectly baked sheets, their edges curling like parchment. The bread's versatility is staggering, layered with cheese and herbs for breakfast, wrapped around grilled meats for lunch, or dried into crisp sheets that last for months, becoming edible plates during harvest seasons. For Armenians displaced by genocide or diaspora, the scent of baking lavash is a sensory lifeline to lost homelands. Modern Armenia straddles tradition and innovation. In Yerevan's bustling markets, elderly women still bake lavash in communal tonyas, charging a few cents per sheet, while food scientists study its probiotic properties, discovering that the natural fermentation process promotes gut health. High-end restaurants serve deconstructed lavash with molecular gastronomy twists, yet rural brides still carry the bread over their shoulders at weddings, symbolizing prosperity. The most poignant adaptation, during the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War, soldiers at the front lines received dried lavash in care packages, the same unbreakable bread their ancestors carried into battle 1,000 years prior. What makes lavash extraordinary isn't its longevity, but its resilience. When an Armenian grandmother in Glendale, California, teaches her granddaughter to roll dough to the exact thickness of 3 sheets of paper, she's not just passing down a recipe, she's preserving a language of touch, heat, and memory that no conqueror could ever erase. The tonya may be ancient technology, but the hands that shape its flames, they're timeless. As winter's grip begins to loosen across the Carpathian valleys, Romanians young and old exchange delicate red and white tokens that hold within them the whispers of forgotten gods and the promise of spring's return. The martizer, a tiny talisman on a braided string, is far more than a charming folk tradition. It's a living artifact stretching back to the Dacians, those fierce ancestors who once worshipped the earth, awakening through blood-red wool and bone-white thread. Ancient Gito-Dacians believed these colors represented opposites in perfect balance: life and death, sun and snow, the warrior's sacrifice and the maiden's purity. Women would weave them into amulets tied around wrists or necks at the spring equinox, begging the gods for protection as nature stirred from slumber. Fast forward through 2 millennia, and you'll find this pagan rite miraculously intact, though its meaning has softened with time. Today's martysaur, delicate trinkets shaped like flowers, hearts, or ladybugs, are exchanged on March 1st as tokens of affection between loved ones. But look closer, and the old magic lingers. The red still symbolizes vitality and passion. The white stands for wisdom and renewal, and the act of wearing it until the first tree blossoms echoes the Dacians' hope for fertile fields. In Bucharest subway stations, vendors sell modern versions featuring cartoon characters or corporate logos, while rural grandmothers still hand-make theirs using sheep's wool dyed with madder root and bleached in the winter sun. The most enchanting twist: how this tradition survived communism's attempts to erase folk customs. Under Ceausescu's regime, when religious and cultural expressions were suppressed, the martyr flourished as a covert act of defiance. Parents slipped them into children's pockets as silent reminders of heritage. Now it's reclaimed its public role with joyous abandon. Cities host martyr fairs where artisans demonstrate centuries-old braiding techniques, and schools hold competitions for the most creative design. Environmental campaigns have even emerged, with biodegradable martysaur replacing plastic trinkets to honor the ritual's original connection to nature's cycles. What makes the martyr extraordinary isn't just its endurance, but its adaptability. A tech CEO in Cluj might receive a digital martyr NFT from employees, while a Transylvanian shepherd still ties the traditional string around his lamb's necks for protection. The threads may change: silky cords replacing rough wool, machine-made charms substituting hand-carved bones, but the essence remains: a scarlet and snow promise that no matter how long the winter, spring always finds a way. These ancient traditions aren't relics gathering dust in history books, they're living conversations between generations, whispers from our ancestors that still shape how we celebrate, mourn, and find meaning today. What makes them extraordinary isn't just their survival, but their ability to evolve without losing their soul. The Japanese tea master teaching tick-tock dances between sips of matcha, the Inuit throat singers blending ancestral rhythms with electronic beats, the Welsh bard composing poetry about climate change in thousand-year-old meter, they're all proof that culture isn't a fossil but a flame. Each time a teenager learns to braid Armenian lavash dough, or a grandfather shows his grandson how to balance a caber, they're not just preserving the past. They're adding new verses to an unfinished story. Look around your own life. You might discover these hidden threads of history woven into everyday moments. That holiday dish your family insists on making the old way. The lullaby hummed in a language barely understood but deeply felt. Even the superstitions we can't quite explain but follow anyway. These are your personal portals to the past, whispering that you're part of something much larger than yourself. Traditions thrive when they breathe, adapt, and belong to living communities rather than museum displays. Now we turn to you. What ancient practices live on in your family or community? Share those stories in the comments. Let's create a mosaic of human resilience. And if you've enjoyed this journey through time's hidden corridors, don't forget to subscribe. Every click that notification bell is like adding another candle to history's lantern, helping us uncover more forgotten wonders together. After all, the greatest mystery isn't which traditions survive, it's which ones we'll carry forward, reinvent, and one day pass on with our own hands. The future, it turns out, has always been written in the language of the past.